Rain lashed against the cracked pavement as the city shivered under the gray November sky. Mia clutched her worn handbag close, her breath visible in the cold air. Her sneakers squelched with every hurried step, another reminder that she couldn't afford new shoes yet. She glanced at her phone and winced. 8:43 a.m. Her shift started at 8:30. "Oh no," she whispered, picking up her pace, heart pounding. Her son, Aiden, had cried that morning because his shoe had torn apart. She'd spent 10 minutes stitching it clumsily while he sniffled, telling her not to worry. But she did worry, always. The bus had broken down 2 blocks away, forcing her to run through the rain. Water soaked her jeans, her hair clinging to her cheeks, but she didn't stop. As she turned the corner near the old grocery store, she spotted an elderly man struggling with a grocery cart that had toppled halfway into the street. The wheels were stuck in a pothole, and his hands trembled as he tried to lift it. Cars honked, people hurried past, umbrellas shielding their faces, pretending not to see. Mia hesitated for a heartbeat, glancing toward the cafe just a few streets away. If I stop now, I'll be even later. But her conscience wouldn't let her move on. She dropped her bag beside the curb and jogged to the man. "Sir, let me help you," she said softly. The old man turned to her, rain dripping from the brim of his faded hat. His eyes were tired but kind. "Thank you, dear. My legs aren't what they used to be." Mia smiled and braced her shoulder against the cart. Together, they heaved it back onto the sidewalk. She noticed the man's groceries, milk, bread, a small cake, all soaked. "You'll catch a cold out here," she scolded gently, pulling a plastic bag from her purse to wrap around the cake. He chuckled, voice hoarse. "You remind me of my late wife. Always looking after everyone else." His words caught her off guard, warming something deep inside her. "Just trying to help," she murmured, adjusting his coat collar against the rain. When she saw his knees tremble, she quickly waved down a cab and handed the driver a few crumpled bills. "Please take him home safely," she said. The man grasped her hand before stepping inside. "You've got a good heart, young lady," he said with a faint smile. Mia nodded, unaware that this simple act of kindness, helping a stranger in the rain, would change her life forever. Then, clutching her soaked bag, she ran toward the cafe, her heart heavy but her spirit clean. By the time Mia burst through the back door of the cafe, the bell above it gave an accusing jingle that made every head turn. The smell of burnt coffee and disinfectant hit her at once. Her chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath, strands of wet hair sticking to her flushed cheeks. She had barely taken 2 steps inside when the sharp voice of her manager, Todd, cut through the low hum of chatter. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," he sneered, slamming a coffee pot onto the counter. Todd was a man who enjoyed authority more than coffee itself. His neatly pressed shirt was in stark contrast to Mia's rain-soaked clothes. "It's 9 o'clock, Mia." "9. That's half an hour late." I know, she stammered, pulling off her dripping jacket. There was an elderly man. His cart fell. He needed help. "Save it," Todd snapped, holding up a hand. "You always have some excuse. Last week it was your kid, before that it was the bus. You think this place runs on your good intentions." Mia's lips trembled. "Please, Todd, I didn't do it on purpose. I couldn't just leave him there in the rain." "Not my problem," he barked, crossing his arms. "This is a business, not a charity. Customers expect service, not sob stories." Behind them, 2 regulars sitting by the window exchanged pitying looks. Mia could feel their eyes on her as she wiped her hands on her apron, fighting the sting of tears. "Just give me one more chance," she whispered, voice barely audible. Todd turned away, grabbing a clipboard from the shelf. "You've had enough chances. Pack your things. You're done here." The world seemed to blur for a moment. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the espresso machine, all faded into a dull hum. She stood frozen, the weight of his words pressing against her chest. Her apron strings felt like a noose as she untied them, her fingers trembling. I really need this job," she said softly. "My son." Todd didn't even look up. "I said you're done." Her throat burned as she removed the small name tag pinned to her chest. She laid it on the counter, her reflection glinting in the chrome surface of the espresso machine. Her heart thudded in her ears as she turned toward the door, aware of every silent stare that followed her. Outside, the rain had eased into a drizzle. Mia stood beneath the gray sky, staring through the cafe window where she'd once smiled at customers and dreamed of saving enough for her son's school uniform. Now she had nothing but the sound of her own quiet sobs mingling with the rain. Still, even through her heartbreak, she whispered to herself, "I'd do it again." Because deep down, she knew she couldn't have walked past that man, not and still lived with herself. The next morning dawned pale and cold, the kind of morning that made the world feel heavier than it already was. Mia sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the folded eviction notice on her nightstand. The corners were worn from how often she'd read it, as if staring could somehow make it disappear. Her son, Aiden, stirred in his sleep beside her, his small hand resting on her arm. She brushed his hair gently, whispering, "Don't worry, baby. Mama's going to fix everything." But her voice trembled with uncertainty. After dropping Aiden off at school, she walked the streets with her worn folder of resumes tucked under her arm. Every "help wanted" sign she passed gave her a flicker of hope, but one by one, they all ended the same way, "We'll call you." No one ever did. By noon, her stomach growled from hunger, but she ignored it, sipping water from a cracked plastic bottle as she kept walking. That's when she saw it, a sleek, glass-fronted building towering above the street, its reflection shimmering like a promise. A bright sign on the door read, "Now hiring, cafe assistant staff." The name at the top glimmered in silver letters, Hale Industries. She'd heard of it before, a massive corporation known for its luxury brands and cutting-edge tech. But apparently, they were opening a new cafe in their lobby. Mia hesitated outside, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. Her clothes were clean but worn, her shoes still scuffed from yesterday's rain. "You don't belong here," a cruel voice in her mind whispered. But another, gentler thought followed. What if this is your chance? Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door. Inside, the world was different. Warm light glowed from modern chandeliers, soft music played, and the air smelled of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries. Everything gleamed. The marble floors, the polished counters, even the smiling receptionist behind the desk. "Good morning. Are you here for the cafe position?" the woman asked kindly. "Yes," Mia replied, trying to steady her voice. She filled out the application carefully, her handwriting neat despite her shaking hands. When she handed it back, the receptionist smiled. "The manager is doing walk-in interviews today. You might get lucky." Mia sat in the waiting area, her heart racing as she rehearsed answers in her head. She wanted to tell them she was hardworking, honest, and never gave up, but would that be enough? Then, as she smoothed her skirt nervously, the elevator doors behind her opened with a soft chime. A tall man stepped out, flanked by two assistants. He wore a tailored gray suit, and his presence instantly drew the attention of everyone in the room. But Mia's breath caught for another reason. She knew that face. The sharp eyes softened by kindness, the faint smile. It was him, the old man from the rain. Only now, there was nothing frail about him. His back was straight, his stride confident, and the air around him seemed to shift as people hurried to greet him. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," one of the assistants said. Mia's heart thudded. Mr. Hale, the billionaire. Her hands went cold as realization sank in. The man she had helped, the one whose groceries she'd carried, wasn't just some stranger. He was the man whose name gleamed in silver above the building. And now, he was looking directly at her. Mr. Hale's gaze lingered on Mia for a long, silent moment. The bustling lobby seemed to fade away, the chatter and clatter dissolving into stillness. His assistant was mid-sentence, rattling off figures and schedules, but he raised a hand to stop him. "Excuse me," he said softly, stepping toward her. Mia rose slowly from her seat, her knees weak. She couldn't tell if it was nerves or disbelief holding her still. Up close, he looked even more imposing. No trace of the frail man struggling with groceries in the rain. His suit was finely tailored, his expression calm yet commanding. But when he smiled, it was the same gentle warmth she remembered. "Mia, isn't it?" he said, his voice deep and steady. She blinked in surprise. "Why yes, sir, how do you?" He chuckled lightly. You didn't think I'd forget the young woman who saved me from being flattened by traffic and pneumonia, did you? Her face flushed. I was just helping. Anyone would have. He studied her for a moment, his eyes kind but knowing. No, not anyone. I remember how people walked by that day. You were the only one who stopped. The manager of the cafe, a woman in a navy blazer, hurried over, bowing slightly. Mr. Hale, sir, what a surprise. I wasn't aware you'd be visiting today. I wanted to see how the new branch was doing, he said lightly, his eyes never leaving Mia. And I see we might already have our best employee. Mia's brows furrowed. Sir, I only came to apply for the cafe position. I don't have any fancy experience. Mr. Hale smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Experience is something we can teach. Integrity, however, he paused. That's much harder to find. He glanced at the stunned manager. Cancel the interview list for now. I'll take this one personally. The woman nodded, speechless. Mia's heart raced. I mean, he said gently, I'd like you to work for me. As my personal assistant. Her breath caught. Your assistant. He nodded. You've proven you care about people more than convenience. I need someone like that. Someone who doesn't walk away when things get difficult. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he replied simply. And maybe let me buy you lunch. You missed breakfast, didn't you? Mia let out a shaky laugh, covering her mouth as emotion overwhelmed her. For the first time in a long while, the tight knot in her chest loosened. She nodded, whispering, yes. Mr. Hale smiled and gestured toward the elevator. Welcome to Hale Industries, Miss Carter. Let's change your life. As the doors closed behind them, Mia glanced at her reflection in the mirrored wall. The tired, struggling mother who had walked into this building a few hours ago was gone. In her place stood a woman with a second chance. Sometimes, she realized, the kindness you give when no one is watching is the very thing that turns your fate around.